We've driven quite a lot of electric cars on this channel, but so far we have not tried a Mercedes. That changes now. Mercedes-Benz Malaysia has invited us to its Pekan assembly plant to check out its new locally assembled EQS. This is not an EQS. This is an EQB, and it's Malaysia's first EV to come with 7 seats. And we're going to drive this thing all the way to Pekan, which is 300 kilometers away, and we're going to test it out to see if it's any good. Let's go. For those of you who don't know, the EQB is an electric version of the GLB. That means it's quite a bit bigger than the GLA and only slightly smaller than the GLC. Now, Mercedes does make electric versions of these cars, the EQA and the EQC. But, as I said before, only the EQB has 7 seats. In Malaysia, this car is priced at 328,888 ringgit. And that puts it in some pretty serious competition. You've got the BMW iX3 and the Kia EV6. Both of those cars are slightly bigger, they are a little bit sportier, and they are priced at around 300,000 ringgit. But the extra 2 seats does make it a better option if you're a family, especially if you have lots of kids. Now we're in the EQB350 4MATIC, and that means this car has 2 motors, one at the front, one at the rear, providing all-wheel drive. Together they produce 292 PS and 520 Newton meters of torque. That might seem like a lot, but this car also weighs quite a lot at over 2 tons. That means it's not quite as fast as those figures suggest. It still gets from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 6.2 seconds. But of course, the big benefit of an electric motor is instant torque, so this car still feels quite fast. Pin the throttle and the car just zooms forwards, just like that. The acceleration does taper off above 100 kilometers an hour or so, this is no Tesla. It's not even as fast as something like a Volvo XC40 EV. But that's to be expected really. This, after all, is not a sports car, it's a family SUV. Now this car also has a 66 kilowatt hour battery, and that means it has a range of around 400 kilometers. We've now traveled around 130 kilometers. We went through the jams on MRR2, we've gone through Karak, we pushed the car a little bit, and now we're on the highway on the East Coast Expressway. And the range has dropped off quite a bit. It's now reading 177 kilometers. But that's still quite a lot of range left. I mean, our stop, which is at the Petronas at the R&R in Bukit Gambang, where they have DC fast chargers, is only 63 kilometers away. So that's no problem. The rest of the car is standard Mercedes stuff. The ride is quite comfortable, and it's quite quiet as well, especially at lower speeds. At higher speeds, as you can hear, there is quite a bit of road noise and a little bit of wind noise around the mirrors as well. But still, this is a very pleasant car to travel long journeys in. It's only in the corners where the car does start to fall apart a little bit. The body control isn't all that good. It does move around over bumps, and the steering is a little bit muted, although it is at least quite accurate. Now, Mercedes isn't well known for creating very sporty fun-to-drive cars, and on something like a C-Class, which competes against the BMW 3 Series, it wasn't really all that good enough. But on a family SUV such as this, it really doesn't matter. It just has to be very comfortable and very safe, which of course it is. Now, while we have this car parked and charging, I want to talk to you about the looks of this car. It is like the GLB, a little bit boxy, a little bit tall, a bit narrow, so it isn't quite as sporty looking as a BMW or indeed the Kia EV6. But seeing as this is supposed to be a more practical car, I can let it slide. Now, compared to the GLB, there are some differences, especially at the front. You have this sort of mask at the front. You have these tapered headlights, and this grille is now covered. The headlights have this sort of blue strip through it, and the DRL goes across the front of the car, which is quite fashionable these days. You can see it on something like the Mark 8 Golf. The bumper is also a little bit different. This grill down here is actually fake and it doesn't channel any air through the brakes and so on. But this center air intake is functional and it cools the batteries and so on. You also get different wheels. This has blue trim and there's an EQB badge along the front fenders. Around the back, the EQB is very different from the GLB. You can see over here that the number plate recess is not on the tailgate. It's actually moved down to the bumper. In its place is this strip that is connected to the tail lights, which mirrors that of the front. The other thing that's different is that the EQB does not come with tailpipes, real or fake. Of course, we do need to talk about charging. I know I said earlier that we had quite a bit of range left, but since then we've been driving at quite high speeds on the way to this charging station. And we only have about 50 to 60 kilometers of range left, about 16% of battery left. That's quite normal for an electric car, especially if you're driving on highway. You do have to factor that in. Now the EQB can be charged at the DC fast charging station like this 180 kilowatt Gentari charger, but it only accepts up to 100 kilowatts. Now that will charge the battery up from 10 to 80% in 32 minutes. This car will also accept up to 11 kilowatts of AC charging, and that will fill the battery up in 5 hours and 45 minutes. So we've just left the R&R in Gambang and we're headed straight to the hotel, which is in Kuantan. Now we did charge the car at the Gentari station and it brought us back up to about 56%, and that gave us somewhere in the region of 150 kilometers of range. So now we're reading slightly above 200 kilometers on the instrument cluster. And that's more than enough given that the drive from here to the hotel is only 68 kilometers. It's at this point that I want to talk about safety, because this is actually one of the good things about this car. See, with most Mercedes models in Malaysia, you only get autonomous emergency braking and that's about it. You really have to spend something in the region of 400,000 to get all the bells and whistles. But this car has everything. You get adaptive cruise control and lane centering assist to give you level 2 semi-autonomous driving. And it works reasonably enough. It keeps you a set distance from the car in front and it steers for you in the corners. Yes, the steering assistance isn't that strong, and sometimes there is a little bit of a delay between the car moving off to the side of the lane and you accelerating. But it does the job well enough and it keeps the stress of driving away. Now it has been a little bit of a long drive, it's been raining earlier and we are a little bit behind schedule. So I'm just gonna set the cruise control on, sit back and let the car do its thing. See you in Kuantan. Right, it's day 2 and we're back at the charging station in Gambang. We're just getting a few more electrons before we proceed to the Pekan plant to check out the new EQS. Now, while we're here, I want to talk to you about this interior. It's very typical Mercedes. You have over here this widescreen display panel with two 10.5-inch displays. The one on the right is the instrument cluster that you can control using these buttons over here. And on the left is the infotainment touchscreen that you can control obviously using touch or using this touchpad down below. It all works very well, as is typical for Mercedes, although the Apple CarPlay and Android Auto don't take up the full width of the display, so it looks a little bit cramped. Other than that, I really like this cabin. It's very well finished, it's well built, and you get lots of nice touches like this bank of turbine air vents and the silver trim that's on the doors, the dashboard and the center console, which look convincingly like metal. And the driving position is very good. You can control the seats using the buttons on the doors, which is very convenient. And best of all, there are still physical controls for the aircon and the steering wheel over here, instead of the touch screens and the capacitive touch buttons that you have on some newer Mercedes. So that's very good. The one thing I don't like is that you can't turn on the air conditioning when you're sitting in the car and it's charging. You have to turn on the ignition, and when you press the button, the charging stops. And it gets very, very odd in here, as you can see. Back here, there's decent amount of headroom, and legroom is actually pretty good as well. This seat, by the way, is put to my driving position. I'm 173 centimeters tall, and as you can see, I still have lots of room. But you do sit quite upright, even though this seat is put into its most reclined position. At least you sit high up, and that means visibility forwards is excellent, which is great, especially if you have kids in child seats. You can also slide the seat forwards, and backwards, which is just as well because the rear seats are actually very small. I'm now going to show you how to get into the third row of this EQB. You pull this lever and the seat slides forwards, and then there's a little bit of space for you to get in. It is a little bit of a tight squeeze, but here we are. And there we are. As you can see, I am now stuck. There's very little space back here, and the rear headrest is also not very comfortable. I should also point out that these rear seats take up a lot of space, eating into the 465-litre boot. With all 7 seats in place, there really isn't much that you can put at the back. So the rear seats are really only good for children, but there's not much in the market right now for an electric 7-seater. This really is your only option. So here we are back at the Mercedes-Benz Malaysia headquarters in Bandar Kiara. It's been a long drive and we just about made it on a single charge. Now, to know more about the EQS, you can check out the video in the top right corner. As for this EQB, it has been a pleasant companion. It's smooth, it's quiet, it's comfortable, it has quite good range, and it's reasonably fast. Sure, it's not quite as good looking or as sporty as some of its other rivals in this price range, but you cannot deny the practicality of 7 seats and this boxy body, no matter how rarely you have children sitting at the back of this car. Either way, I really like this car, as you can probably tell. Thank you so much for watching this review of the Mercedes EQB. I really hope you liked watching us going from here to Pekan and back. What do you think about this car? Let us know in the comments down below. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and ring the notifications bell icon so you don't miss any of our future videos. As always, stay awesome. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.